A lot of traders tend to overcomplicate scalping, but today I'm going to show you my top 3 scalping setups that I utilize every single day and that have helped me become a consistent, profitable trader. So before you get started, you always want to make sure that whatever ticker that you're looking to trade is charted all the way through. So you want to start on the 3-year weekly time frame and you work your way down onto the 15-minute time frame and chart all of these significant levels. The reason why we want to start charting on the higher time frames is because those are the strongest levels. If you're charting your stock properly, as you move along down the time frames, you shouldn't have to add as many significant levels. The levels that have hit on those higher time frames should consistently be hitting on the smaller time frames as well. That's when you know that you've identified the proper support and resistance levels. So the first setup that I'm going to go through with you guys is a gap/wick fill. Now, a gap fill and wick fill look different, but they are traded the exact same. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is that for me personally, my entries always happen on the 2-minute time frame, and then I monitor my positions on the 2 and 5-minute time frames when I am scalping. If we go ahead and look at this chart here on SPX, we can see that SPX gapped down from this level at 63.96. So I'm going to move this up here a little bit. So around 63.96, it gapped down to 63.81. Okay, so the gap fill is from 63.81 to 63.96. Because it gapped down, what you're going to be looking for is it to fill the gap back up. So we're going to look for calls in this setup. What you want to wait for, the first thing you want to wait for is a breakout of the post-gap level, the post-gap level being 63.81. You wait for the stock to break out of 63.81. The second thing you look for is a confirmation candle on the 2-minute. What I mean by confirmation candle is this candle right here. You wait for one candle to break and close above the level that you're looking for. You wait for the next 2-minute candle to open above that level. So the candle after the breakout candle is your confirmation candle for entry. That candle should open above the level, since we're looking for calls, above the level of resistance to the upside for you to enter that position. Your targets are going to be the next levels of resistance to the upside. So for this example specifically, my targets are going to be 63.90 and then the end of the gap at 63.96. We enter on this 2-minute 10:06, 7:06 Pacific time candle here on SPX as it holds above the post-gap level. First target hits, you scale out, and as the second target approaches, you continue to scale out of your position. Okay, and that is a gap fill. With gap fills, a couple of things that you want to take into consideration is that the gap does not always get filled all the way through. Sometimes it will fill the gap partially, sometimes it will fill it all the way through. It really depends on the overall market momentum, the stock that you're trading, the catalyst behind the stock that you're trading, if it has news. Specifically for SPX, if you're trading SPX's gaps, it tends to move with overall market momentum. So depending on what futures volume looks like, depending on what overall market volume looks like, will determine whether or not SPX will fill the gap all the way through or not. So you always want to make sure that in between the pre-gap level and the post-gap level, you have levels of support and resistance and profit targets where you can take profit as the stock fills that gap. The next example we're going to go through is a wick fill, and this is a wick fill on QQQ. So usually you'll see wicks on stocks like QQQ, SPY, NVIDIA, Tesla. And what you'll see is wicks usually happen in the pre-market or after hours trading. So we can see here there's a wick on QQQ wicked down. So a wick fill is a similar setup to a gap fill. So what you want to see is the wick fill down. If the wick is up, you want to see the wick fill up. So because QQQ wicked down, we're going to be looking for puts to the downside as it enters the wick fill. Where does the wick fill start? So you can see here, the lowest level on pre-market here was 581.50. We know the wick, if you zoom in here, the wick actually starts at around 581.61 because in the pre-market, we made a little bit of a low here at 581.50. That is going to be the level for entry to the downside for that wick fill. So that being said, as we go ahead and look into the market, let's see what happens. So your breakout level is going to be 581.50. So you're going to look for a breakout and confirmation candle. Now, this is a really good example because we end up getting a retest. So this is your breakout candle. This is your confirmation candle at 10:12. This would be my entry on QQQ as it held below 581.50. Now we can see that QQQ ended up pulling back. So as it pulls back, what is going to be my stop? My stop on QQQ is going to be a break and hold back above 581.50 or the 9 EMA. Now, if we go ahead and look at the retest, you can see that as we pull back and retest, the 2 minute candles are not strong bullish candles. There's a lot of wicking, which signifies a lot of indecision in the market. You can see that this is your breakout candle, closed above. This candle wasn't able to fully hold above 581.50, and neither was this candle. And you can see that both of these candles, slight doji candles, which signifies indecision between buyers and sellers. On top of that, we're still holding under that 9 EMA. So as we're pulling back, nothing that I see on this chart signifies that I need to exit this position just yet. As you can see, we're in a pullback. Volume drops here on these candles here, on the 3 doji candles. Volume is significantly lower than when we had previously, which is good. That signifies that it is a pullback and not a reversal. As it retests, it comes back down. What happens to volume picks back up and we slowly make the move down. Okay, and your targets are going to be the next levels of support to the downside until the end of the wick, so that those target levels are going to be 581, 580, end of the wick at 579.60 here is the end of the wick fill. Okay, and you can see that when we made the move down, made it down into 580, and when we pulled back and retested 581, previous level of support, that is now a level of resistance, kind of bounced back and forth before we ended up filling the rest of the gap. And you can see here clearly that we're not able to get above those EMAs. We're holding below previous support levels, so this trend is still in place. This is a scalp, so what you do is scalp from level to level. Now you can scalp down to 580 and then exit the position and then re-enter below 580 into the end of the wick. Personally, I would scale. So I would scale out at my first target 70 to 80%, 10 and 10 at my second 2 profit targets. That way I'm able to capture a bigger percentage of the move, but still be in a scalp position and not a day trade. The next scalping strategy that I'm going to go through is the EMA and VWAP cross. Now, I don't use a lot of indicators on my chart. The only 2 or 3 indicators that I utilize are the EMAs, the 9 and 21 EMA, and then VWAP. VWAP is really helpful to identify overall market momentum on the stock that you're trading, and so on and so forth. It's my favorite indicator. I utilize it on every single ticker that I trade. And what you're going to look for in a setup like this, you still want to utilize your support and resistance levels. Price action is king, so price action always comes before anything else, because indicators utilize historical price action to actually be able to chart themselves. Price action always trumps any indicator. Indicators do lag. All indicators lag. There's not one indicator besides maybe order flow that is going to help you identify when the move is going to happen. They're all going to be lagging behind overall price action. So in this example on Tesla, we can see that we had a level of resistance and a level of support. Okay, so support is sitting at around 335. I'm going to push this down. And then resistance is sitting at around 338.50. Okay, so we can see that in the morning we did kind of range. So we have an opening range. Tesla ended up breaking to the upside of that opening range. And when we did break the upside of that opening range, right before the breakout, what do we see here? We see the EMAs, both EMAs crossing above its VWAP level. When both EMAs cross above VWAP and the 9 EMA, and the stock is trending above that 9 EMA, it usually signifies the stock is in an uptrend, and it is a buy signal if we get some volume come in. Now, for this specific example, I would wait for the breakout overall of the level since we're in a range, because it can reject here. That is the safest entry, but this is just confirmation that we are heading into an uptrend. The main play here is going to be a little bit later. We can see that we ended up rejecting and coming back down. Now, this is the actual setup that I really like, is because it happens a little later in the day. We've seen a little bit of the price action, tried to break out to the upside, wasn't able to hold, and then we start to reverse. Now, this is when the setup becomes a higher probability setup if it happens later in the day. We can see that Tesla rejected, comes back down towards its VWAP level. Right here, if we zoom in, we see the 9 EMA cross below the 21 EMA. This is usually called a death cross, and it signifies that we could head into a downtrend. Right after that 9 EMA crosses below the 21 EMA, we can see that it then crosses below VWAP. And this EMA also crosses below VWAP. Now, both EMAs are trending below VWAP, and Tesla is trending below VWAP and both EMAs as well, which signifies that the stock is in a downtrend. Right after this could be your entry point here as it rejects the 9 EMA. The safest entry here would be this candle right here, okay? The 1124, 824 Pacific candle. This is your breakout of that bottom of the range, 335. 335 also being a psychological level on Tesla. This is the breakout candle here, breaks below 335, closes below 335. This candle opens below 335. You get the EMA cross. EMA and VWAP cross signifying a solid downtrend, a strong downtrend, strong bearish candles coming in towards the breakout level. This is your confirmation. Right when this candle opens is your entry to your next levels of support to the downside. Okay, what can happen here is that your stop loss is going to be set at the VWAP level. The stock can go back and retest VWAP level before it comes back down. So I would set my stop at VWAP, and you can see overall volume is high. Stock makes the move down, pulls away from that 9 EMA here. And it's not until that's later in the day we can see that it rejected and then broke back above EMAs and into its VWAP and wasn't able to get above VWAP really for the rest of the day until the end. With these setups, you want to use them in conjunction with overall futures. You want to pay attention to what NASDAQ and ES are doing. You want to pay attention to volume. NASDAQ, the key factor to my scalping strategy is volume. You want to make sure that with whichever strategy that you're implementing, whichever setup that you're implementing, there is volume behind the move. If there's no volume behind the move, the stock is going to struggle to be able to actually break out of that level, or you'll get caught in false breakouts. So the biggest factor to this is making sure that whenever the stock is breaking out of the level that you're looking for, is to wait for volume to step in. You want to make sure that either buyers or sellers, depending on what side of the stock that you're looking for, are in control of the ticker. Volume increases, there's aggressive buying pressure or aggressive selling pressure coming in. At that point, that is confirmation for entry as well. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, comment them down below. If you have any videos that you'd like to see in the future, also comment that down below. Everything is linked in the description box. My socials, bookmap, anything like that is all linked in the description box below. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Bye.